Okay,
All
great.
right. What's up, horror fans? Pete here from the Lassercast, where me and my good friend Danny, who's sitting in his car in Brooklyn, are talking about streaming shows and movies, horror movies. This time around, we are talking about the Oddity. And I'm in my garage. Now, here's the thing. I keep hearing this like tapping noise on the other side of my garage door, and I'm kind of concerned that there might be like a mental patient that's trying to come into my
Or
house and kill me.
or
Yeah.
or a large wooden statue with its mouth hanging agape, ready to come in and slowly stalk after you.
Right, right. You know, Danny, it's funny because this movie premiered at South by Southwest. And so many movies like premiere just about 20 minutes from my house in Austin. And I get excited about them because my Twitter feed gets filled up with images from them, and people are raving about these movies that we eventually get to see a couple of months later. For this movie, they had that prop. They had that mannequin like at the premiere, and people would pose and take pictures with it. And there's something about that thing, that image, that I think elevates this movie, just makes the excitement for this movie so much stronger, don't you think?
Yeah, it's a hell of a prop, and it's one of those things that you can stick on the marketing. Damian McCarthy, this is I believe it's his second feature. His first movie, Caveat, also had a prop like that, and it actually appears as like a cameo appearance in what it's Danny and Darcy. So right, so Darcy's shop, the Oddity shop, the rabbit. The rabbit is from Caveat. Uh,
Oh,
so
okay.
so he's really good at creating these new horror totems that are gonna like be central to the marketing of his movies and to some of the scare moments in the movie. And like I think we knew where this movie was going the second you saw that.
Right,
But
right.
if it had just sat there at the table the whole time, it still would have been just as effective as it was. Because it's just a
Yes.
creepy freaking thing to look at.
Yes, yes, 100%. It's funny because you said he's only made one other movie, and you said that there's a prop in it that is creepy as hell, just like the prop in this movie. It's interesting because they use the same set too. The film, this movie, the majority of this movie takes place in this repurposed, refurnished barn in Ireland, in Cork, Ireland. And that's the majority of the movie is set in this one space. Apparently, that was the same space they used for Caveat too. And I think that like there's one movie I kept thinking about a lot. If I could only remember the fucking title, but it was another movie by an Irish filmmaker who made Evil Dead Rise, and you and I covered it on this channel. It's about
The hole in the
changelings.
ground.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I remembered that movie, so I kept thinking about it when I was watching this because both movies really, really, really benefit from the cinematography and the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And this place that they use where they filmed this movie, it's got this atmosphere
Oh yeah.
where it's like beautiful, but yet like stark. Like there's not much to it. It's beautiful, stark, and then just like scary because of all the dark corners in this place. You
That's
know?
I'm glad you brought that up. To me, there's two locations really in this movie. There's
True.
this
True.
like dank dying hospital,
Yeah.
and then
Mental
there's
hospital.
this
Yeah.
amazing uh old like repurposed home in Ireland, and that house feels like it is a character in the
Yep.
movie because
Exactly.
it's such a small cast of characters. Uh you have the lead, you have Ted the doctor, you have uh Danny and Darcy, who are played by the same actress, Carolyn Bracken,
Right.
who are twin sisters.
Right.
You have the other you have his
Yeah. Yana.
Yana, who's his friend. Uh, I believe the actress is also that's a Caroline, Caroline Melton, I believe
Right.
her
Yeah.
name
There's
is.
multiple Caroline. Yeah.
And
Caroline.
and then there's like the guy who's trying to get in the house at the beginning, and there's like an orderly at the hospital. So there's like 6 total characters played by 5 total actors. You have this
Right.
giant wooden statue, and you have this amazing house. And you said it there. It's just, I love movies, and this is where we come from as a channel. This, like, I thought so much of The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor, those early Flanagan Netflix projects,
Yeah.
because I find myself, because of Flanagan,
Yeah.
I find myself drawn to dark corners of rooms. And I find myself focusing in on the nothingness that could be there. Because so often in the Mike Flanagan movies, there was something there. There was a hidden ghost or something. And it wouldn't be there in one scene, but then it would be, you'd be like, oh, I just saw something. And this movie does such a good job of creating that feeling of unease
Right.
and tension from absolutely nothing. Just
Right.
like here's a character, and they're sitting at a table, and there's a dark rectangular opening behind them.
Right.
And the camera just is, the director, Damian McCarthy, does so well at just leaving the camera in places or moving the camera ever so slightly. And you're just sitting there thinking the whole time, there's something in there, there's something in that corner. And then when the movie does its jump scares, they pay off. I have to say, I saw this movie. I did a short review of it back when I saw it in the theaters.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if this is a criticism. My critique of the movie was simply that I found it very predictable.
Yeah.
Nothing in the movie that happens
Yeah.
was shocking to me, because I've seen enough horror movies where and we'll get into spoilers in a few minutes, where I was like, okay, I have a feeling there's a murder that happens at the beginning of the movie. I had a feeling that this person was behind the murder. I had a feeling that these things were going to happen in the order in which they happened.
Right.
And despite that, it still got me so many times. Like, I still sat there knowing what I was watching,
Right.
basically knowing what was going to happen next. And I still got jump scared a bunch of times. And I still just sat there with that feeling of like unsettling unease from the darkness. And that, to me, like, this movie's grown on me since I saw it in the movie theater. Like, I walked out of the movie theater thinking this was a solid 8 out of 10. Really good, really creepy, a little too predictable. But now, like, I watch a lot of movies, and I'm like, sometimes if you follow the normal story beats of a movie, it's okay, especially if you do it really fucking well. And like,
It,
we were here last week talking about In a Violent Nature. And In a Violent Nature is another movie I really enjoyed. But then there's that ending, which kind of feels tacked on, which kind of feels out of nowhere.
right.
And it kind of like, you walk out of the theater, instead of feeling invigorated about this like cool horror movie you just saw, you're kind of like, it was cool, but what the fuck was that? And I didn't get to rewatch Oddity in full, but I did get to like rewatch bits and pieces of it this morning.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting in my car watching it going, oh shit. Oh, that's good. Oh
Yeah.
man. And
Yeah.
and it's the kind of movie where Charlotte hasn't seen it. So I would gladly, like, this is a movie I think that would really freak her out. Like, she'd be watching it with like the blanket or the pillow over near her eyes. My sister used to call horror movies like this pillow movies, because you can't watch them without a pillow ready to like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
squeeze over your face.
Yeah. I like that definition. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because the more we cover new releases, the more I start to see a pattern. It seems like there's a lot of these movies that get a lot of buzz on social media because they're either like crazy with over the top. Where it's like, oh man, the kills, this one scene. Like Terrifier 3 is getting so much attention right now, and there's other movies that have come out this year too that get so much attention because of that. Then there's the movies where it's like, oh, the emotional stakes or the gut punch you feel from this movie, and that's often kind of like maybe something directed by Mike Flanagan or some kind of movie that has this kind of depth for a horror movie. Then you have these movies where they have these like sort of like original takes where something's different. They did some kind of spin on something. That's the usual stuff you get a buzz from on social media. But then you have a movie like this where it's just kind of like the movies that we would watch when we were growing up, where they're just a movie, they're just a story, but they're really, really good at telling that story. Like you said, it has all the story beats that you can kind of call from a mile away, but it's like you go to it, you enjoy it, and then that's it. And it, if the directing is strong, if like the cinematography is impressive, if the acting is good, then it kind of stays with you. And it doesn't need that over the top gore. It doesn't need that kind of twist that you haven't seen before. It's just this effective movie. And I think it's interesting because I think that like Damian McCarthy's influences are really exciting to me too. Like, for instance, that mannequin that we keep referring to, he said that it was inspired by movies like Child's Play and Creepshow, where it's like these things that just by looking at them, they're creepy. He's talking about like the Chucky doll, and what's interesting about like Child's Play and Creepshow, what he was talking about was that these things would be creepy and you knew they were going to come to life, but at least with this mannequin in this movie, it's like, well, this would be imposing if you had to deal with this. This would be intimidating.
Yeah, you can't
if this
kick this one away.
Right. Yeah, you can't throw it across the room. Right.
So it's really funny when I first saw the marketing for this movie and I saw that, mannequin, it reminded me of a movie that I had seen the box for back in like the video store days. And I actually found the movie streaming on Tubi. It's called The Fear. It's just called The Fear. And I watched this movie, and if you ever get a chance, it's not great, but it's about a group of college kids who are one of them is doing like a thesis about fear, and his professor, played by Wes Craven in like a 5-minute cameo, sends them to this cabin in the woods and in the cabin in the woods, he has this like childhood wooden doll that he sets up, and it like weirdly comes to life and it starts like hunting the kids at the cabin. It's not a great movie by any stretch, but it's like an isolated location with like a wooden like doll / monster. And I was like, oh, so I watched that, and this movie's far better than that. But I was wondering if anywhere Damian McCarthy had seen the movie The Fear. I think it came out in like 1995. It's just a weird one that the marketing for this movie made me remember the VHS box.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I bet you he did see it, Danny, because he seems to be a guy that is really into this kind of stuff, like creepy items. When at one point we go into Darcy's shop and there's all these creepy items all over the place, and apparently he bought a lot of those items himself because he goes to antique shops and gets things like that.
Yeah.
So I thought that's really interesting little twist.
I like that her store is basically the Warrens' room in the Annabelle franchise.
I thought that too. Yeah, and then I also so you're gonna have to remind me of the name of this movie. What is it? Amicus Horror, right? That was like the company, the British company that make all these. Right. So there's that one movie with Christopher Lee where he has a shop like that too. What the hell's that movie called? Do you remember? It's anthology.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of Amicus anthologies. There's Asylum, which that's not Asylum.
Yeah.
There's
I'll
like
look it up while you make your
Tales from the
point.
Crypt, Vault of Horror.
Yeah, it was so good too. It has what's his face from fucking Halloween too. Uh,
Donald
uh,
Pleasance.
yeah, Donald Pleasance is in it. Yeah, Christopher Lee, Cursed like Antique Shop. Let's see. I'm gonna look it up while we're talking. Um, yeah, but like, why don't we talk about the performances though? Because a movie like this, that's very bare bones, a lot of it is based upon the acting. And so you have an actress playing the double role of two twin sisters. I think she does a phenomenal job. Carolyn Bracken. You know, these are two very distinct characters that
Yes.
she's playing. To where
It,
at first, go ahead.
no, I know exactly what you're going to say. So go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that like at first you would almost assume that it's played by two different actors because they physically look so different and they act so different too.
Yeah, I think it was a very smart decision to have like one be like the brunette, longer hair, and uh, Darcy, who owns the shop, is short blonde hair and she's blind, so she's got that like so they look so different. That was a very good. I think that was a good choice by the director to really have them stand out, and also
Mm-hmm.
just personality wise, like Darcy. Darcy's character is so almost weirdly funny. I got a kick out of all of the stuff in the house between her and Yana. I thought was fantastic because I think we've all been in that situation where we've had a guest at our house who maybe we're like for them to go, or like we didn't really want them there in the first place and somehow now they're there. And that's how Yana is. She's like stuck in this house,
Right.
which her boyfriend, uh his ex-wife was murdered in. The murdered ex-wife's twin sister is in the room, and with this giant fucking scary mannequin, and
Right.
she's forced. There's this like one scene where she's like, "All right, well, I'm leaving. You'll be okay, right?" And she's like, and then Darcy goes, "Well, I am a little hungry. Maybe you could fix me something." And I was just like, "That's funny. Like
Yeah.
that's genuinely funny because it's such an awkward moment, and the fact that she's blind and she can't see Yana's over the top facial reactions. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
Right.
Like,
Right.
oh, can you tell me where the bathroom is? Yeah, okay, fine. Here, the bathroom's over here. The fridge is just back into the right. Will you be okay?
Right.
Hey, like, yes, I'm gonna leave you, blind woman, the sister of my uh, boyfriend's murdered ex.
Right.
I'm gonna leave you alone in my house because you're so creepy, and I'm willing to leave you alone in the house to get away from you. And
Yes.
so I really enjoyed those parts, and I thought that it built the tension so well. And then obviously the tension, is broken by other things, whether it's the jump scares, the ghosts, and other things. We might as well talk, men, put up the spoiler warning just
Yeah.
so that, yeah. So we're gonna, at this point, we'll probably get into spoilers. But I thought Carolyn Bracken did a great job. It's a tough thing to do to uh, play two incredibly different characters in the same movie.
Right.
Uh, and also, I thought Caroline Melton, which I believe is her name, she did a really great job as Yana. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, and the guy who plays Ted, who has one of those Irish names that I think it's like Willis or
Gwillem.
Willem. Yeah, so it's probably Willem or Willem. He comes across as such like a swarmy, like gaslighting bastard. that you're kind of hoping that some of the stuff that you see in the movie happens to him.
Yes. Yeah. It's really interesting because when this movie first starts, when you're watching like the first 10 minutes, you're not sure exactly what's going to happen. And you see him interact with his wife, who's still alive at this point, and he seems like a decent guy. So there's basically like two scenes. His wife calls him. He's at his job. You know, he seems kind of busy, but he seems like a decent husband. Then the next scene is he goes to visit his wife's sister at her shop. And here's, by the way, here's the name of the movie. It was From Beyond the Grave. That was the movie
Oh,
that Christopher Lee is in that has that shop that's like this shop. Anyway, you go and you see him interact with the blind sister. What's very interesting about this movie, right? The sister's blind. She's one of the main characters. And throughout the course of the movie, she's given little tidbits of information at exactly the same time that the audience is given tidbits of information. So we have these scenes, but it's not like we see a detail about a murder or something like that, and then she eventually uncovers it. It's like every time that she uncovers something, that's the same time that we uncover something too,
well,
right?
also we haven't even mentioned she's like also kind of a psychic medium, so she can like pick up on things from touching people. She's got a bit of the dead zone in her, you know.
Right. She says it literally at one point that she has psychometric powers, right? And that if she touches an item that someone had that was very close to them, she can like have visions, right? So it's funny though, because when you see Ted again, like the second time in the movie, he's in her shop and he's kind of charming. He's talking to her. They're talking about maybe getting together and stuff. And then he just ever so subtly mentions, he says, we. And she's like, what do you mean we? We'll have you to the house. And she's like, what do you mean we? And he's like, oh, it's this woman, Yana. So he establishes that he's had this girlfriend for a while, and Darcy is surprised that he's moved on so quickly after the death of his wife. And boy, does like the movie take a turn, like right in that moment. You feel like a certain way. You're like, oh, this is going to be that this tragedy, this mental patient like killed his wife. It's kind of like The Sixth Sense, where like there's this home invasion from a mental patient that led to this tragedy, but then it's like no, it's a different type of movie, and it all happens in that one little interaction where it's like you're on board, you're kind of feeling this guy, you're like, okay, I feel bad for him, he lost his wife, and then all of a sudden and you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, but there's two scenes that just so first of all, the idea that he goes, we will have you up at the house, and then like the next day she just shows up like, oh, I thought you invited me, and he's like, I no, what, like.
Yeah,
And then but also like one of the best scenes in the movie to me is the scene where the wife is murdered,
absolutely.
where she's at this incredibly dark house. She goes outside, and then this escaped mental patient starts banging on the door, and he's telling her he saw somebody go into the house, and she's of course scared of him. And so now you as the audience, you don't know what to do. Do you go outside with the insane mental patient who you can see, or do you trust the insane mental patient that there's somebody inside ready to kill you? And
Right.
this is where the first instance of Damien McCarthy using the darkness of that house to his advantage. We get this incredibly creepy scene with a blank masked killer sitting outside the tent with a hammer while she's screaming. And then there's just this great jump cut to a bloody tent and the killer looking like exasperated.
Right.
Uh, and so, right off the bat, okay, so the mental patient was telling the truth. So, there's something more than meets the eye. Like, so now you have in the background, there's a murder mystery that needs to be solved.
Yes. It's so funny that you say something more than meets the eye. I mean, I love the Transformers reference right there. But also one of the things that stands out is that this character, his name's Olin Boole, and Olin Bull has a fake eye. It's very reminiscent of Charles Dance's eye in Last Action Hero, where it his one eye, his regular eye, moves around, but then this other eye is just static, just staring straight at her. Very effective, because in this old refurbished farmhouse, there's a little slit in the door where you can pull it and you can just see who you're talking to, and his face kind of fills that space, and you just see this eye staring at you. Really effective scene, because it borders the line of, this seems like a person that's trying to manipulate her, that's dangerous, to, oh, this man genuinely cares about her and is worried about her, and you can't tell. You're going back and forth. And there's a couple of shots that I really love where, like, he kind of pulls back and he's in shadow, and his eyes almost look like they're just like white eyes and creepy. I love some of the shots in this movie. Now, what's interesting is that Olin Bull, they mention his name multiple times in this movie because they believe he's the murder suspect who killed Danny. Fucking Damian McCarthy made a short film about him years ago. It's called How Olin Lost His Eye, and it's about that character. So I think it's so cool that, like, he's got a fucking shared universe, with this movie in the short.
Yeah, that's. I always like when you see this a lot, especially with horror directors, where they get started. Like, you'll look at their IMDb page, and they'll have like a whole bunch of shorts, and I always wonder, like, when they become like bigger names, and like when they start to get success, like, they should put out those short films.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Like Flanagan, I think I have like a Blu-ray of Oculus that has the short film Oculus that he did. That was like his 1408 project, and then he got producers to expand that out to do the full movie.
Yeah. I mean, this movie, I feel like Damian McCarthy has to be inspired by Flanagan on some level. Like, it has that Flanagan vibes. You were just talking about the scene with the masked killer. That kind of gave that vibe of like Hush. Then like there's the idea of, in Hush we have a deaf woman who's attacked by a slasher killer. In this, you have a blind woman who's in this house eventually by herself at one point, and there's the perils of this blind woman being in this house by herself, and then there's the kind of haunting aspect of it too. There's one thing that we haven't talked about yet. One of the great scenes, the scene where there's that turn, because Ted is talking to Darcy and he's talking about his new girlfriend. It starts off with this haunted bellhop bell, where she's like, okay, here's this haunted bellhop bell. And he's, of course, skeptical. Also, one other thing, because we're talking about these Flanagan connections, the guy that plays Ted, like Willem Lee or whatever the fuck his name is, he looks like the oldest brother in fucking Haunting of Hill House too, don't you think?
I can see that. Similar look.
Yeah, but he's a skeptic, and he's like, oh, why don't we push the bell right now? And it's like Chekhov's gun, where the bell does come back into the movie later. We are talking spoilers.
I can't believe you wrote that, because I was saving a Chekhov's bellboy line for the end. But so I'll give you a perfect example. When I said before that, like, I thought this movie was predictable.
Right.
The second in the shop, like 20 minutes into the movie, where she hands him that bell, in my head I'm going, okay, we're gonna see that again. And then at the end of the movie, you think he gets away with it. You think he, like, so, like, obviously, if you haven't put, we're in spoiler talk now, but so, like, the husband, Ted, he, like, hires the orderly to go kill his wife. And I thought it was such what a line to really paint yourself as a complete asshole dickhead, where somebody says to him, why, I think it was the orderly, who's like, why don't you just divorce her? And he goes, she wouldn't be able to get over me. And I was like, what the fuck? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, yeah,
Like what a fucking line of dialogue to make you hate a character
yeah,
so much. So he
yeah.
hires this orderly Ivan to go murder. He's the guy in the white mask who murders her with the hammer. He's the guy that the Olin Bull saw run into the house. And so he's like, but it's all the Ted. Ted is like the conspirator who is, setting up to murder his wife. And so I knew at the end when he gets the package, the second you see it's from the Oddity shop, I went, oh, it's the fucking bell. And you
That's
know what?
right.
It it works. It works because even that last scene is so perfect. The camera just sits there. You pan in, you pan out. You're like, oh, you're gonna see it. No, no, nothing there. The music starts to play. Ted starts to laugh because at this point he's like, oh, I I believed it for a second too. And then it's like that one perfect shot to end the movie of just him sitting there with a stupid smile on his face and the fucking haunted bellboy off to the side. And I was just like, you see, that's a great ending. That makes you want to like sing the movie's praises. And it's just this like moment where as a horror fan, you can like walk out with a smile on your face even though you know something, because you know something really bad is going to happen to a really bad person at the end.
Yes.
And
Yeah. And
I thought,
he is so fucked up. It's kind of funny because you think about the power that he has in his mental hospital, right? Because he's got this orderly that was a mental patient at one point, and then he like vouched for him and got him to work with him. And then he sends this orderly to kill his wife. Then he wants the orderly to go check up on Darcy, who he believes to be dead at this point towards the end of the movie. And there's this really fucking cold thing that he does where Darcy has gotten herself up onto the second floor, like up onto this balcony area in this house, and she's confronting him. She's talking about exposing him. And he says, okay, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go talk to the orderly. I'm going to go talk to the police investigator or whatever in town. And then I'm going to call you back on this phone. And he says, when the phone rings, you answer it. So he says that, and the way he says it, you're watching the movie, you don't see like what's at his feet or anything like that. You just see him, but it's the way he says it. When the phone rings, you answer it. And you're like, okay, the way he said that, it's kind of weird. Then we eventually have this scene where Darcy is lying in a pool of blood and the orderly guy is looking her over. And you're like, okay, well, what the fuck just happened? And he says, when the phone rings, you answer it. They cut back to it, but you see that he opens up this like trap door that's in the balcony floor, and he puts the phone right in front of it. Or I'm sorry, like the trap door's there, and then the phone is behind it, so that when she goes to answer it, she falls through it. And it's so fucking evil. Like this guy is just an evil fuck, and you're waiting for him to get his comeuppance. But my whole thing, Danny, that I because I saw like little flaws in the logic and stuff. One of the things that I thought, maybe this might be nitpicking, is that there's that great scene with tension with Olin Bull or whatever, and he's talking to Danny, and he overheard the conversation where they're literally plotting her murder. And I mean, he could have literally just told her, your husband sent this guy to kill you, right? But he doesn't do it. He's like vague. And so, I mean, did you think that?
I think it's also like, how would like, you are a mental patient in a mental asylum and you just show up at some woman's house and go, your husband's trying to kill you. Like, I think it's going to turn out pretty much the same way, where she's going to be like, okay, thanks for the information. Stay the fuck back. Like,
right.
no, I swear I heard it through the walls. Like,
okay, fair enough. I think that's a good thing. I agree with you on that one too. I wanted to kind of, before we wrap this up, I wanted to just kind of talk about the mannequin itself and
yeah.
sort of the lore and stuff behind it. So the thumbnail that I have for this video is the worst, or the wedding gift from hell. because it is funny. It is a wedding gift, but I'm wrong though. It's not a like someone got married. Here's this gift. It's actually a wedding anniversary gift that the twins, their mother got on like their, I don't know, 5-year anniversary, I think, or 10-year. It's supposed to be that like you get something made out of wood for this particular anniversary. So a witch gave their mother this crazy ass fucking mannequin,
Yeah.
right? And it's funny because the creature itself, you know, there's stuff built into it, literally and figuratively. Like it has these fucking holes in the back of its head where it kind of looks like a bowling ball. It's got like these like 5 holes in the back of its head, and each thing has like each hole has a weird item put in it. And like, what did you think of that scene where she's like taking the items out of the mannequin's head?
I I really liked it. Again, it's this creepy fucking item. It's this creepy statue, and you build a lore behind this thing, and just those subtle things of like the holes in the head and inserting the thing. It just because the whole movie, let's face it, the whole movie, from the minute you see that thing, you are waiting for it to lunge out and grab you.
Right.
So the idea that like you have to stand there and like put your hands into it is so unnerving for the character, but then for us, because we're just sitting there waiting, expecting this thing to move, bite, attack, grab, like do something the whole movie. And if it had just sat there the whole movie, I still think it would have been amazing. And then
Right.
eventually, of course, it does get up to slowly stalk after Ivan. Uh, Once he goes to check that the deed has been done and that Darcy is laying there basically dying. Um, and yeah, but I feel like that is a prop that in the hands of a different director, this would have been a straightforward monster movie
Right.
where uh Danny is murdered at the beginning. Darcy shows up, and within 30 minutes, we have a giant wooden monster walking around killing people.
Right.
Uh, which is kind of what that movie, The Fear, ends up becoming from like 1995.
Yeah.
Uh, but the restraint by Damian McCarthy to just leave it on screen for as long as he did. It's just there. It's
Yeah.
in the background. It's Yana's walking around up and down, and this house again. I come back to the house. It's so fucking great. You like because you can go up the stairs, and then it has like an entire there's like an entire you can like circle the and look down, and you could circle the entire like perimeter of the
Right.
house.
Right.
And so this wooden demon statue is there in on camera almost the entire time in the house.
Right.
And so the restraint that it takes to leave that there and just let it haunt the viewers, like, because I felt like I'm sitting there and I'm like, did it just move? No. No. Is the mouth put? No. Okay. No, it's still there. And like the camera will turn back around and you'll be like, it's gone. No, still there. Okay. It, and it's just fucking with you, the audience, because then finally when it does stand the fuck up, you're like, oh shit, here we go.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's very, very similar to the clowns in Hell House LLC, right?
Great comparison. Great
Yeah.
comparison.
Yeah. And I feel like this movie, it has to be influenced by that somewhat too, you know, where it's like, you know, this creepy setting. It reminds me of the most recent Hell House LLC, where they're in that house and they're staying overnight and they're filming it. And there's aspects of that too. There's a camera that they use multiple times in this movie because Darcy does believe in spirits and the afterlife and places being haunted. She has her sister set up a camera that's like on automatic, taking pictures, trying to find like orbs and stuff. And that's used to great effect in this movie. When the masked killer shows up, the wife checks the camera, bunch of frames, just the regular image of the tent, nothing there. And then all of a sudden, the masked killer's in one shot. Really effective, really great jump scare. We see the masked killer like stick their head into the tent, like when she's looking out. That was a great jump scare. That actually literally made me jump. Um,
There's the Yana when Yana's upstairs. Um, uh-oh. Pete looks like he froze, which means I probably froze on his camera. But there's the moment where Yana is upstairs and she's taking pictures with her phone and you see the ghost. That got me in the theater really good too. It did the exact same thing where you froze and I was like, do I keep talking? And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna jump out and jump back in. So no, I think this is a movie where like I said, I saw it in the theater. I was satisfied. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was creepy as hell. And then the more I thought about it, the more I just giving like rewatching probably a third of it in pieces, it really made me appreciate it more to the point where I feel like this is a movie that is going to creep up my list as we get towards the end of the year. Um, and yeah, it's a movie that I would definitely watch with Charlotte because there's nothing like overtly crazy in it, but there's a ton of like super creepy stuff. Uh, like she watched the original Hell House and she watched Hell House LLC and she was really creeped out by that. And I could see her also uh, getting worked up from this too. Uh, so next week we're going to cover VHS Beyond, which just released to Shudder. Uh, I have started to post shorts for 31 Days of Halloween, 31 Days of Horror. Uh, I I know it's already, we're recording this on October 5th. I've only released one short, but I have watched the movies each day. So I'm going to try to throw a couple more up this afternoon, maybe one more tomorrow so that I'm caught up. I do want to, uh, I did just watch the new Salem's Lot, which we were talking about, which is fine. It's worth a watch, I guess. Um, and yeah, so we're going to be doing some more Shutter stuff as we get closer to Halloween. We're going to be reviewing VHS Beyond. We're going to be throwing up a bunch of shorts. We got this coming out, and we just finished Shutter's Horror's Greatest series last week. Um, that was fun. Yes, that I don't know what channel that's on. Awesome. Yes.